Okay, today is the 20th of September. I am recording this on a Friday at 9:30 p.m. Okay, why am I working at 9:30 p.m.? I don't usually work, but in general, these days after my I'm getting like off from work a bit early, and after my kids sleep, so I'm coming back not to work, but usually I collect a lot of YouTube videos and a bunch of things to read, and not necessarily always work related, but sometimes some blog posts or papers and things like that. And I just try to finish up like in the after my kid sleeps at 9:30 or so. So 9:30 to maybe 11 or so. It's not serious work time, but I do this maybe in the last few months. Uh, I mean, that's at least like some time saved during the day. I think, I should watch a lot of videos during the day. Otherwise, like I'll read a lot of like unrelated blog posts and things like that. Okay, so yeah, what did I do this week? So this is the week starting on the 16th of September. So first thing is, I was already quite like tired last week with all the Kai submissions, and so like I said last time, I didn't sleep on the Thursday. So Friday was a slow day already, and then there was again ICW-SEM deadline, revision deadline on Sunday. And obviously, I mean, I don't work on the weekends, and these days it's also really hard to work on weekends, which I don't do. So I unfortunately did not help my student much. Like he did most of the heavy lifting, so I'm sure, and submitted the revision. Like, but I had some time, maybe 1 2 hours here and there, to just go through what he did and provide some suggestions. But he did most of the work, and he really spent a lot of time to submit the final draft. That's great. So we submitted that. So I mean, this was one of those down weeks because, the last 2 weeks has been like somewhat intense. And so this week was a down week, at least getting started. So Monday, I mean, most of the things on my to-do list were, okay, I mean, I have big things to that are on a deadline to achieve, like or to work on, like but yeah, so I mean, I was really trying to just finish up my tab backlog, archive backlog. So yeah, that's one thing I do a lot. Is every day I spend about 10 minutes going through all the papers published in my field or archive, and so I open up the papers that are interesting, and then I read them later. But that just creates a backlog of like dozens of tabs. So from time to time I go and clean those up. That's the first thing I did. Then I also, so the two main things that I have upcoming are there's a October 2nd deadline on for a journal paper that we submitted, a revision for the journal paper. And so, yeah, because I'm traveling next week, I have to really finish all of those this week. And I had it on my calendar, like on my notes every day to do, but okay, I didn't do much of it. But anyway, so that's one thing that was big thing that was on my to-do list, but I didn't do. Another thing that I did this week, big thing was, so we are working on a project that does like the sort of bottom-up fact checking. This is a big project for me. First time I'm the only one involved in doing this type of field work with a lot of like real world participants. So we're recruiting some journalists who do some fact checking. It's a complex design, RCT, where we're actually getting some real world data. If we can pull this off, like it's going to be a big deal. I I'm really doubtful if we can pull it off, but anyway, that's so for that I had to talk to like half a dozen journalists, and some of them said yes, some of them said no, and then setting up contracts with them, setting up like putting them in touch with my team, training the team, like all of that stuff. Like so so I talked to some journalists. I got them on board right now. So we are finally, after I don't know 6 7 months of planning, are again touch wood, like ready to roll, like start the project. But I did some of that work. And then yeah, I'm going to Stanford next week for a workshop or a trust and safety workshop. So I was just planning and looking at the conference setup and like who is attending, just to see if I can write to some people that I know. In the end, I didn't write to anyone except one person that I know. Then, I mean, another thing that I really don't get a lot of time these days is just sit and think, like just spend like a few hours to think big picture. Like, okay, you keep thinking of these projects and doing these projects, but a lot of them are, you just get used to some sort of thinking, right? Like, so, okay, for instance, we're collecting some YouTube data now. Yeah, so, it's a very big project in that sense, like in the sense that it's very large scale and we're going to get some very novel data. But then the questions that I have in mind are very trivial questions, okay, descriptive stuff, like which I think is a bit underselling, right? Like, so there's lots of questions that you can really think of, we think, sit and think. But I just don't get the time to do that a lot. Like, there's so much context switching happening that, you don't have time to sit down and say spend 2 hours just researching and thinking, okay, what are good, interesting questions. I wanted to do that this week, but yeah, that didn't happen. Uh, Another thing that I did is so I'm going to Munich next spring for a month and a half. So I was planning that trip. I booked the trip. I planned all of the I'm going with my family, so I'll be I rented a car. I booked the hotels everywhere. Planned the car travels. Planned some vacation. Like every weekend, we want to go places and things like that. So I did some of that stuff. Then there are these other small things like uh, we are working on a couple of other papers with some collaborators. So for their papers, like for the paper that a student of mine is doing, I'm trying to just try to provide some feedback, and so I spent some time on that. So the paper is very interesting. Maybe I'll talk about it next in 2 weeks or so. It's about like the bias that news organizations have based on ads given to the news organization. So that's we extracted some novel data from print newspapers and we're doing this. So that's a very good, interesting thing. And yeah, finally, like I think today I was just trying to get some like setting up the data collection from Spanish Americans for or like Spanish speaking Americans, Latinx populations in the US. Hopefully, I mean, that is going to be a big thing. Like if we can pull it off, like everyone is just, are really interested and only interested in how things are in the US. Obviously, US is the center of the world. That's why I'm here. That's why everyone wants to be here. Like so, even if we spent like a lot of money and did a lot of really impressive things in India and Brazil, nobody cares. But if you do something in the US and find something, there's a lot of money. There's lots of um, potential impact that can come with that. So I'm finally trying to spend a lot of resources in both time and effort and money into getting data for the US. So we're doing something for the Brazilians living in the US uh, for Spanish speaking people living in the US. So yeah, I'm trying to get some people on board for that to recruit some people and things like that. So let's see how that goes. So that's another thing that I was doing today. So yeah, that's it. That's it for this week. So next week is going to be a light week again. I'm going to travel more to that conference. Let's see how that is. My first time in Stanford after I went there for an interview, for a postdoc interview, that I did not get that job in 2017, I think. Anyway, yeah. So that's it. And yeah, see you next week.